Sharon Mah-Gin, thank you so much for joining the podcast. We go way back, and we were just talking before recording here, how much I appreciate having met you earlier in my career when I was in transition, thinking about my next move, and I was meeting recruiters, and you stood out as way more than a recruiter because of the type of advice you gave me that really made an impact on me. And to this day, we've maintained a strong relationship from that moment. And I really am grateful to have you on the podcast.
Great. Well, I'm delighted to be here. And yes, I love asking the tough questions, David. And it's wonderful to see you on this newest adventure. And I love the name CFO Hive. I think it's just a really catchy name and it's easy to remember.
Thanks, Sharon. And so on that note, your headline on LinkedIn is what I kind of want to start with, because I know you're super intentional about what it says, and I'm going to read it. It says, Global Connector, Executive Recruiter, Client Partner. And I just want to hear from you, how you, in your own words, describe, who you are and what you do.
Well, part of why I did it that way is simplicity is always the best. And I always say in any presentation, when you're interviewing or doing anything, it's always 3 key thoughts, right? 3 key things. So that's why it's intentional. You're exactly right. So when I think about Global Connector, it's because I came out of Korn Ferry. I've had my own search practice. So I've done searches all over the world looking for top talent from all over the world. And I love diversity and love meeting people of different backgrounds. So that's why I use the word global. In terms of executive recruiter, that is what I am. And I sometimes, as you know, there is a big difference between contingency recruiting and executive search. So I want to make it clear we're in a retained approach and not a contingent approach. And then client partner. We are definitely a partner with our clients. It is not a transaction. It is all about relationships. So that's why I was very intentional with those sort of 3 captions.
Well, let's go back, because you started your career in audit, as did I. Yeah. I think you didn't leave that quickly. You spent some time practicing as a CA. But what drew you into the world of recruitment, and what made you make that move?
Okay. Well, David, that's a great question. The first thing I want to clarify, you and I are both CAs/CPAs. I tell everyone that my CA means I can't add, which I definitely cannot add. I ended up basically becoming an accountant because those jobs back in those days, this is before the internet, they were easy to find. In other words, remember the red and green pencils and the ledger paper? That was back in that era. So I really was more of a sales and marketing person. So you're exactly right. I did it till mid-career. And then in real estate, believe it or not, I was working in a real estate company and I got downsized out. And I had 2 young kids at home. And I thought, now's the time. If I don't do it now, when will I do it? I knew I wasn't a great accountant. I could do it, but it wasn't what I loved. So I really took the time to think about what it is I wanted to do. And I came up with four key criteria that if I had 3 job offers, how would I decide? Number 1 was sales and marketing. Number 2 was pay for performance. Number 3 was flexibility. And number 4 was have fun, which is, David, you and I have talked about that a lot. That's what life should be about, is having fun. And it's with that intention, I stayed open to the universe, did about 40 information fact-finding interviews, took every opportunity, because why not? I was in outplacement. And what I found out was that every time you had a discussion, you didn't figure out exactly what it was you wanted to do, but you quickly learned what it is you didn't want to do. I'm only sharing this because I think this is applicable for all of us we've all pivoted in our careers, right? And so what happened was I met this one recruiter. It was a regulatory reporting job at the Bank of Montreal. And I said, no, definitely not me. And she's the one who suggested, have you ever considered recruiting? And I had not. And I didn't know about executive search. I only knew about contingency recruiting, which is very transactional, as you know. And so she suggested here are 2 firms that are hiring. She shared her background, MBA, CA. By the way, her name was Susan Larkin. I'm proud to tell you her name. She was a coach. She's the one who changed my life. She's retired now.
I remember Susan, and I know her. And I think recently learned that she was retired, but she's still linked in and we're still connected.
Yeah, well, she was the woman who changed my life, and I'm proud to tell you that because I've acknowledged it that in every opportunity that I have, and we're friends. We became friends, and she's the one who changed my life. And so if it wasn't because of her suggesting it, I wouldn't be in search. And yet, if you think about it, it's sales and marketing, pay for performance, flexibility, and have fun because it's all project related.
I'm guessing that you have had that same impact on several other CA or CPA candidates where they've met with you and they've then left and explored a whole other career than they walked in there thinking they were going for.
Yeah, I would definitely say yes. One individual who actually thanked me. It was because of my discussion with her. She actually went into recruitment. But I've had others consider beyond that, evolving from a CFO to a COO role, right? Or taking that facet and going FP&A or cash management, or treasury. As you know, our CAs, it's a great business background, but you don't have to be an accountant the rest of your life. It's a great basis in terms of knowing numbers. I have no regrets that I did it, but it teaches you business, critical thinking skills, strategic thinking skills, right? Especially with those case studies that we used to do, going in and audit and understanding the business. And that's what that grounding gave both of us.
I'm sorry, I'm going to jump around a little bit here just because you're bringing up other questions for me. But do you find, because I even find as you and I are speaking, when we say CA and CPA in the same sentence, is because we're kind of confused because we're CAs and now it's CPAs or CPA, comma CA. But back then, we knew that all CAs kind of went through a similar experience. For better or worse, audit and tax hours. And nowadays, I just find myself unclear, uncertain what type of experience folks have when they present themselves as a CPA. How do you find navigating that?
David, that's an excellent question. When they decided to amalgamate the CMA, CGA, and CA program, the first people to change to CPA were the CMAs and CGAs. And as you know, it's a different education stream and training that you go through. So they were the first. The CAs really hung on to that CA for a long time, including me, I'll be honest, because I knew what I had to go through. It was tough. It was very tough, to become a CA. And then, of course, it doesn't help that in the US, the CA equivalent is CPA. So that, first of all, it was confusing when I was doing CFO searches between CAs and then, of course, the CPAs from the US, and some of them had CPAs from the US. Then it became even more complicated when the CMA, CGAs, came out. So a lot of times, if I look at a resume, you can just tell by where they worked, whether it's the CA they have or a CMA or a CGA. And then when I'm interviewing them, I will actually ask them, before you became a CPA, what was your designation, right? Unfortunately, there's going to be some catch-up time, right? Just from the training, etc. There's going to be some catch-up time. But David, you and I both know it's very distinct type of training, skills, education that one goes through for those three streams. So we're in that, what I call that gray zone, for lack of a better word. And most CFOs still have that. They still want that CA external audit training versus the CM, like the management accounting or general accountant, CMA, CGA.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of that is, bias and what we come from and or slightly a known commodity or what seems to be a known commodity.
Correct. I would say
versus we really need those skills for this particular role.
Correct. I would say it's a combination, and the reality is the people who are hiring are older, so they are biased towards. I want one of the big four, training, etc. And I would comment, David, at this level, when I'm doing CFO searches, I have never put in a CMA or CGA. It's just a different skill set and set of experiences. We're not there yet.
Yeah, and I'm increasingly finding that the traditional CA path is not relevant just to many CFO situations. So I think when you just kind of, these are indicators, and we like to have certain, credentials. Some people hire only those that went to Harvard or a particular school. that's fine. But ultimately, when you look at, who's suitable for a particular role or mandate, I find it's really like, what have you done?
Yeah.
and sometimes, the traditional path is really just not as helpful. And I've seen, iBankers much more effective in a CFO role for a particular type of mandate.
Well, I call the external-facing CFO, raising capital, dealing with analysts, etc. Are you finding with your CFO hive, when you're getting those requests, are you finding it's more that traditional CA? Have you placed any CMAs or CGA profiles?
I have placed all. I've placed people that aren't even CPA or CA at all in CFO roles of public companies. So yeah, it really comes back to what you said, which is, are you external-facing? Is there a commercial orientation? Is it capital markets? Is it transacting? If it's M&A, in a private equity environment, I don't care, how great at audit and what Big Four you worked at. Like, if you haven't done that, it's going to be, a challenge. So yeah, it's a combination of all of these things that we put together. So
experience and also the softer skill sets in terms of critical thinking, strategy, problem solving skills, right? Like, there are people that I've met who are VPs of finance who want to be CFO, and I know they'll never make it there. And why?
Yeah.
Because they lack the critical thinking, strategic skills. They're too much in the weeds. They're too much hands-on, right? They can't get out of that, right?
Yeah.
But they're great VPs of finance.
And would you say those people are by and large coachable? Can you get them out of the detail to the strategic, or like born or made?
Yes.
What is it?
I would say I've seen both. Some are coachable, and some just aren't. I have a dear friend who just never made it out, and I would tell her, but it wasn't innate to her nature. And the reality is that it's okay, right? You need sometimes that strong number two. Or sometimes I've been called in to do the CFO search because the number two, they don't see at that level.
And while we're here, what's your take on industry experience? It's been a topic that comes up quite a bit for me.
Yeah, great question, and I have a strong opinion on it.
Yeah.
I feel that in many of the functions, whether it be CFO, like finance, HR, marketing, even CEO, operations, CEO, industry experience is not a must-have. I feel, and the reason why is I feel our skills are transferable when you're at those senior levels, the C-level, VP, you've got people ideally who already have that experience, right? The only function that I feel it is difficult is if you're in sales. Those lists of contacts that you've built over 20 or 30 years, I cannot replicate as quickly, right? You know what I mean? If I'm changing industries. And in sales, it's all about relationships, like certainly high-level sales, right? So that role, like in sales, I've always said that you're paying for the Rolodex, basically, like the contacts.
I mean, I think my reflection on some experience in sales myself, which is, I know, unique for the CFO path, but as you know, I took on a sales role, or sales leadership role, I should say.
You did.
Sometimes it could be helpful to have someone that maybe knows your customer if they don't know your space. So certain, like to your point, the Rolodex, right? And they know who you're selling to versus your space. But just broadly, I have found industry experience to be like a really touchy one, and a lot of folks have very strong opinions on it.
Yes.
But businesses and CEOs tend to look at it as, they want someone with industry experience that can, as they would put it, hit the ground running, and that doesn't need me to handhold.
Yes.
And so I found, many times I may disagree.
Yes.
Due to a bunch of other factors, but I may also just say, well, okay, let's not fight uphill here, and we can bring you that too.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's better to have either it's an outside perspective, or I would not sacrifice the skills. Getting someone that knows how to do what needs to be done. And if you're in like construction services, nobody there really knows how to build effective systems and processes, at an enterprise level. Nobody's a strong word, but it's not, a space where your competitor's probably not doing it either. So,
well, especially in finance roles too, right? Like, I mean, so I would just say that what I typically do is when I do executive search, number one is the strong cultural fit. Number two are the skills. And then number 3 is the comp. If 1 and 2 are fine, number 3 always works. I've never not closed a search, because if 1 and 2 are correct, comp will always work, because both sides want to make it work. So what I typically do, if I find someone that's really good from a cultural fit, and that's someone you and I can talk about later that you introduced me to, she didn't have the industry experience, but she got the opportunity, right? You know what I mean? But it was the cultural fit. So what I was going to say is I've taken people out of, for example, out of healthcare and put them into a mining company, a publicly traded mining company. So what a lot of times I would do is I go, here are 2 candidates that totally meet the profile. Like they've got the industry experience, blah, blah, but here's a 3rd candidate, call it your dark horse, call it your underdog. I just think they don't have the industry experience, but I think they've got the cultural fit. And then every single time that I've done that, David, my underdog or dark horse has always won, and their career has taken off.
And do you really put fit above skills, or the skills have to be close enough, but if it's the right fit and cultural fit, they'll figure out what they don't know? Is that where you're coming from?
That's exactly right. Cultural fit is number 1. I cannot tell you how many times I've done what I am a little bit unique, because I will put candidates forward that I feel the fit is there, and then the skills. I never even get the best skills. Like that mining search, I had a profile on paper that was like a wow, but it wasn't the right fit. Yeah, and even if you have the right skills, you'll never be able to influence people. I just recently did a very high level search, not in finance, but more in compliance for one of the top major publicly traded companies, like the top publicly traded company probably in Canada. We'll leave it at that. And that individual had no retail experience and no corporate experience. He was a partner out of one of the big 4 firms. But it was the soft skills, the critical thinking skills, the ability to influence that really got him the role.
Yeah, fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of instinct and feel that I'm sure you've developed over time. And for me, sometimes you just know when it's just not there. And
you're right.
No matter what you bring skills wise, this is not going to work.
No, and that's why, David, I'm hoping that we're going to outlast AI. That AI cannot do that. Maybe at the more junior levels, but not at a more senior. Like I typically work at the VP, C-level, board level, right? So not at that level. Maybe junior recruiting, but I just can't see AI, because that's a huge influence right now in our industry, right?
Right. Well, maybe that's a good segue to AI. No, we don't have to do an AI segment. We have too much to talk about. Okay.
That's right. We can talk about lots of things, David. Okay.
Yeah, we can, and I want to get into that. But first off, so you already alluded to this. It's not just finance focus; it's sales at the executive level, executive search. Are you industry agnostic?
No, I'm open. I'm a generalist. It's harder to do that. But when I was at Korn Ferry, I helped them build 4 practice areas. So you know why I like working different industries, David, is that I can pull talent from other industries. My 2 other colleagues are more specialists. One is in real estate, the other one's in not-for-profit, and they can tell you every single name, every single person, probably in the industry. I won't know as much, but what I love is I can pull talent cross-fertilizing from different industries. And personally, it keeps me sharp. I love learning about I did some searches in cryptocurrency recently, a CFO search. I did another search before CFO search in cannabis. So it was sort of interesting. I never thought I would ever be doing work like that.
Yeah, I find the same thing. I mean, there's common threads, and that's interesting to sort of understand, what applies to all businesses, the fundamentals and the basics. But then there's the, learning new things and where the excitement lies, and, innovative spaces. And I also like, and you probably enjoy this as well, but drawing lines that are not as obvious from one industry to the next, why this person's experience, uniquely qualifies them in a space that maybe there aren't a lot of experts. So I think it's more art than science, but it keeps it fun.
Oh, absolutely, David. At the senior level, absolutely. It is more of an art than executive search is more of an art than a science. Absolutely.
What would you say in terms of the evolution of search in your career, AI or whatever aside? I don't think that's really impacted how search works today, but the evolution of search. And now I'd say, my world, it feels like fractional is growing, and that word fractional didn't really exist 10 years ago, but just more broadly, what has changed over time that you've seen?
Well, I would say to your business, I think it's a wonderful business model in terms of fractional CFOs, especially for mat leaves or even for companies that can't afford a full CFO. There are a lot of emerging companies. Back in my era of graduation, you worked for a bank, you worked for lawyers, you were a CA. Like there was not a lot of choice. I have two boys, and both of them are working for companies like a fintech. I've never heard of called iCapital. Another one is working for another company called Share Through. Just got bought programmatic marketing. Companies that we've never heard of, right? So you having this role, the fractional CFO. What I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of startup companies now, whether it be in life sciences, which I know you've done searches in, or technology, mining even, you know what I mean, where they really need someone at that level, but they don't need them full time. And I actually think some of those roles can be quite exciting because you're helping build something. Right. And then a lot of times it becomes full time, or if it's a good fit, like, you know what I mean, as they grow. So I do see that trend. So I think that CFO Hive is a wonderful business service that you provide, and it's needed.
Well, I'm going to capture that, and that's my new commercial that's going out in social. Sharon saying CFO Hive is wonderful. That's a great promotion. Thank you.
I just really love your, like, the CFO Hive, like in and out, right? Like I just think, and you're making honey, you're making money, like you're making, like, I just love the pictorial of how you brand it.
Well, I appreciate that. You were one of the early advisors that I reached out to when I was, establishing the business, and I appreciate, again, like I said, all of the support and advice. And I know you like the name from day one. It's stuck, and it sort of feels right. Yeah. But what we do, I think, is largely complementary as well. And I find, just helping. Establish what's probably like a growing segment of the market that otherwise may never have even sought a senior finance leader, because one, they probably didn't know what it was, didn't think they could afford it, and a combination of them learning more about what that can do to help them, and an increasing number, of folks in their career exploring contracts, whether it's in between roles or a shift in where they want to, how they want to spend their time. It just grows the opportunity for value creation, in businesses at a senior finance level.
And I would just comment, having done CFO searches in the life science sector and also finance searches in the mining sector, there are individuals that before CFO Hive came along that were just on their own, get one contract, you know what I mean? And then they get up, and then your name gets around. So they weren't affiliated with anybody, but they would just, call so-and-so. And then they had so much work, they said they had to turn it away because they couldn't, but they just sort of built a nice little practice of their own, 3 to 5 clients. They just did quite well, and it was flexible. Sometimes they went in-house with them. Sometimes, they decided to go back into the corporate world. But I did meet a few individuals who had that type of profile, and I thought, good for them. And it really came about just through referrals.
Yeah, and I've met quite a few of those individuals, and I think they're great. Like many of them, I would call like pioneers in fractional before fractional was a term. And I found just being, again, complementary with them as well. So, I tap into their available capacity. And, I also tell them if they're turning down mandates that don't fit or they don't have time for, come to me because I've got capacity and we can partner. So the model's worked out well, finding those folks because frankly, they're the ones that are best at this. There are folks that try this for the first time and do really well. But then there are folks that are like, when you leave corporate and move into fractional, you need to learn how to manage that and how to be effective. Yeah.
You're exactly right, David. You have the corporate background and now you're an entrepreneur. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, a lot of learning.
Exactly.
So, something I learned that, partially, meeting folks like you, but I don't think is like taught enough at the foundational level is networking and connecting people and, giving and sharing and putting out there as much, just how can I help you? That's like a mantra for you. Talk a little bit about that being a core part of your approach and what it means to you.
The first question I say is, how would you just describe what is strategic networking?
For me, I would say it is, finding your community and helping your community progress in any way you can, meeting folks, understanding who they are and what drives them, and helping them, move things forward.
Yeah, and David, you do that really well, by the way. But the way I describe it for me is I always go, it's not about me, it's about how can I help you? And ideally, it's with like-minded people, because if the person's not very nice or not your type, why, don't bother. It's a waste of your time, right? You know what I mean? So it's really about how can I help you? And then ideally with like-minded people where there's mutual sharing of information back and forth, not to be confused with scorekeeping. More reciprocality is the key word here. So in other words, if I have you for lunch 10 times, I'm not going to keep score that you're going to have to return. But there has to be some give and take. It can't be one-sided. It's not any different than any friendships that you have, right? If you were the one always calling, making plans, etc., how long do you think that friendship's going to last? So, and that is not just to be not for jobs. It is like when you're sharing the referral, who's the best plumber? You know what I mean? Which school are your kids going to? Which school do you like? That's the sharing of information. And people get confused because they think it's only for jobs. It's not. And kids need to start in their teens, their late teens, in terms of learning how to strategically network. How can I help you? Here's the key though, with no expectation of anything in return. In other words, there's, already when you're networking and how he can help you, there'll be some sharing, but if you get nothing, it's okay too. That relationship just won't continue probably, that's all. So, because if you do something expecting, okay, now you owe me whatever, that's not what I call genuine networking. And people pick that up, right? We've all met people like that in our life, right? You know what I mean? They're saying it, but it may not be as sincere, et cetera, et cetera. So, and I try to help you with that in the sense that Oprah Winfrey, in her very last show, she said, what did she say? She said, what is the one, I've interviewed over, 30,000 people from royalty to convicts. And what is the one thing that every single person wants? I see you, I hear you, and what you say matters. People want to feel valued. So when you do say, how can I help you? It's the same feeling, right? That I value you. How can I help you, right? And that's what she said. It's not any different than Dale Carnegie, How to Win and Influence Friends. When he talked about, if I met you at, you and I met each other at whatever networking events, etc. And I said, oh, David, I love your glasses, and you go, oh, wow, that's great. And how are you enjoying the conference? Studies have shown if I only asked you three questions about you, and then you might say, what do I do? Maybe not, but I would just respond by saying I do executive search and leave it at that. But then I switch it to you, ask you three questions. I go, oh, sorry, David, I see Jack over there. I've got to go say hello. Nice meeting you. If someone came up to you, put a mic on you and said, what did you think of Sharon? You're going to say she's terrific. And yet when you look at the video, I never once spoke about myself. It was me engaging you to talk about yourself. So a lot of these networking events, I actually end up introducing people. David, I want you to meet so-so, and here's why I want you to meet them. I find it flat if I just go, David, meet John Smith. Then it's okay, what? It's really nice if you can say, David, I want you to meet John because of whatever. You know what I mean? Try to have that one word, and then right away you can go to a conversation, and I can disappear. But I did it like that type of stuff.
I have seen that live in action, and it's real. Sharon really does that. I've seen you run across an entire room full of people and, bring someone over and say,
oh yeah, I did do that.
David, meet John. And
I did do that with you, David.
It's fantastic.
I forgot about that. I did do that. I was chasing you down, I think, at an event.
But it comes back to also something you said, which is interesting. So as much as you can teach this, people really need to internalize it because if it comes out, as you said, if it's not genuine or authentic,
yes,
people pick up on that as well. If it looks like it's transactional, like I'm making a deposit now to build credit, and then I have something I'm expecting in return, people will pick up on that. The other thing is I feel like you have to like people. to be effective at it. Is
Yes.
that fair?
Yes, you have to like people and take an interest in people. And so when I say to people, true strategic networking is how can I help you? It changes their whole mindset. Because I used to ask job seekers, like, what is it? Because I'll say, okay, that's great. You've looked at LinkedIn, you've sent out resumes, but what about networking events? Like, what events have you gone to? And they look at me and they go, oh, I said, so you're hiding behind the computer, are you? Like people need to meet you because it's about a likability. I say, why is it about networking that scares you? And they said, well, I feel like I'm begging. I said, no, you've got it totally wrong. You got to think about how can I help you? If you feel you're begging, your mindset is that it's all about you. Right? So when you change that mindset, it becomes a lot easier. But there's like little tidbits at networking. Approach groups of 3, because groups of 3, you know what I mean? It's easier for you to break into the conversation, right? You can bring a wing person, I've said to people, like you bring another person with you and you can go meet other people. Or the best way to meet people is in the bar lineup. Why? Because by then you've checked in, you've put your jacket or whatever away, and you're in line getting a drink to get ready to meet people. So if you're in the bar lineup, it's one of the easiest ways to meet people because they want to meet people and you're waiting in line anyways.
I know, you've got the secret ins, which we can probably spend a couple of episodes talking about.
You got it. Yeah, I can do one. Yeah.
So just, on that note, I think the next big one is, to me, personal branding.
Yes.
And you talk a lot about that. And I think that's where folks sit down with you and they talk about themselves and you're like, wait.
Yeah, that's right.
And I just remember recruiters I would meet would look at me and I would say, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for that. I had no idea what I wanted. I was just, making it up as I went. You're so green early in your career. In the first move out of, like for me, KPMG, I had no idea who I was, what I wanted. But most recruiters would just like barely make eye contact, take notes down, like, where can I place you? Great, I'll call you. And then call me the next day about something completely, different than we had spoken. But not all. But you, not only would you not just take that away and kind of be nice, you would turn it around on me and say, A, B, C, D,
yes,
not working. You need to rethink this.
Yes.
And you would talk about personal branding from day one. So
yes,
tell our audience, your philosophy around personal branding. What should people be doing and how should they be approaching personal branding?
Well, David, as you know, I'm all about the power of 3. You know what I mean? 3 key thoughts. Right? Keep things simple. Well, it's really simple. Personal branding. What makes you, David, positive, relevant, and unique? That's going to help a company make money, save money, or help solve a problem. Let me say that one more time. Personal branding. What makes you positive, relevant, and unique? That's going to make a company money, save money, or help solve a problem. And if you think about that from a personal branding, and then you overlay that with the soft leadership skills, in terms of being able to look people in the eye, positive, smiling, strong communicator, you'll get the job. It really comes down to that. So an example would be, David, in the level of search that I work at, everyone tells me they're strategic, they're a people leader, they're a problem solver. And I go, so what? Every single executive is going to tell me that. So what is it about you that might make you positive, relevant, and unique? That's going to help a company make money, save money, or help solve a problem. So even on your resume, I say every bullet point after it, say, so what? So what? You know what I mean? Led a team of 100. So what? But how about adding coach and mentor 2 of them who are now in leadership role? Cost savings, did some cost savings. So what? So say, resulting in X dollar savings or making money, you know what I mean, or ahead of budget. It really tightens it up. Or if you want to make yourself positive, relevant, unique, you can say you're a global experience. Sometimes if you're bilingual, sometimes you've had sales and finance. You've held not just a finance role, that makes you really unique, David, that you've actually gone outside of finance, right? So that would be part of your proposition. And then when you come at this entrepreneur business, you come at it from, I've lived the corporate world and also the sales world, right, etc.
Sort of someone gave me this advice, which is it probably was in a different context, but it kind of applies everywhere. Lead with strength, and it's sort of, what are the superpowers? And I remember because I was in a startup scale up environment and I was wearing many, many hats. I found myself, really able to get into a lot of different areas, learn what I needed to do, and be effective in that environment. And that's a certain skill set on its own.
Yes.
But after that role, I remember I was talking to someone and I found myself basically referring to myself as like a jack of all trades, master of none, like in other words.
Yes.
And it's just positioning, right? So the superpower for me was, being able to handle an environment where there's just multiple tasks and a broad range and knowing what needs to be done. But the same conversation could come across as, kind of like generalist and, not really expert at anything. And so lead with strength.
Right. Lead with strength and tell a story. Right? People love stories, right? Like instead of just doing generic stuff, lead with strength and illustrate it with one story, like one strong story. That is more impactful. You think about speakers you listen to all the time, the ones that tell you actual stories are so engaging versus just, facts, right? Or so that would be the other thing that I would say. Absolutely.
And we're not talking about people branding their business here. We're talking about branding themselves and that story.
Right.
Do you think that is lost on many people, the idea that they are and have or should have a personal brand? Are you finding folks just look at you and say, what, a brand?
Personal branding is one of the largest and hottest topics. Like Dr. Andrea Wojcicki, who I've done the podcast with, that's what she focuses and coaches people to, is on the personal brand. I, as an executive search retained firm, when I'm interviewing people, I'm trying to figure out what's unique about them, positive, relevant, and unique. That's going to help my company make money, save money, or help solve an issue. So I absolutely think everyone needs to have a personal brand, especially in professional services, right? Like what makes the big four firms, like consultants. I just finished doing some sessions with some of the big four firms, and they're out there selling themselves. You and I are selling ourselves, right? So, what makes me different from any other recruiter? What makes you different from any of your other, fractional CFO companies, right? So you really, and I actually will state it, like for me, what makes me positive, relevant, and unique is the fact that I bring to the table the CA, but I also bring to the table a tier 1 global search firm experience, but the personal touch and flexibility of a boutique. So I don't have to deal with off limits. So I don't have to deal with, a lot of political meetings, etc. I don't have to deal with a lot of overhead, right? So my tagline is what differentiates me is the professionalism, process, and network of a tier 1 global search firm, but the personal touch and flexibility of a boutique. And David, if you think about that, how would you differentiate yourself?
Well, can I borrow yours? I thought yours was actually fantastic. Bringing sort of the best in class of expertise and what I call precision expertise. And it's back to what you said, the right, fit, the right skills, the right availability is also a capability. And then supported by someone that's been in their shoes. And so having had that 20 years in corporate, I've viewed as somewhat an advantage, both in getting to know my clients and their businesses. And a lot of times their needs are different than they think. And so being very close to them and then supporting my CFOs.
So do it in one line. You want to do it as a tagline, right? Like I just said mine in one line, right? Professionals and process and network of a tier 1 global search firm, but the personal touch and flexibility of a boutique. So what would be you want that one-liner?
So I'd say best-in-class precision expertise, meeting the needs of your business, supported by someone that's been in their shoes.
Yes. See, so something along that line. Exactly. Yeah. That's what you want to be able to do is to different. So when I'm interviewing people, and you experience this yourself, David, is if I'm going to try to help somebody, we only have 24 hours in a day. So if I'm going to spend an hour with someone to help them, I know you've asked me to speak to people, I'm not just going to babysit. Like a lot of recruiters I know will just go, okay, well, thank you very much, and I'll call you if there's a role. So when the first thing I'll say is, let me hear your personal brand. Like, let me, like, or what's your search strategy? You know what I mean? And then I'll give them advice. Because the way I look at it, I don't have 24 hours in the day, and I'd rather be helpful than babysit. So I know many people say like, wow, like what I got out of this has been incredible. Like I give them actionable advice and it makes sense. Like anytime I ask someone to do something, if you ask me, why am I asking you to do that? I can totally tell you why. And when I give that response, it's like, oh, never thought of it that way. And I just want to go back to one thought, especially for your younger people who may be listening. In search, what we often say the best profile that we love are people who have worked 2 to 4 years at a big company, you know what I mean, and then gone to a smaller company that might be a startup or whatever, because I love seeing that flex. So 2 to 4 years. Ideally, every time you make a move, you can tell me, and I did this role because it gave me people management. I did this role because it gave me a P&L to run. And then we'd like to see them at smaller companies because then I can know you can flex and be more entrepreneurial. And then, by the time you're 40, then obviously it's the soft skills, the ability to articulate, personable, energy, critical thinking skills, concise, tight, communication. That is what we call an A candidate in our world.
Ooh.
And if you think about it, they're not easy to find. And a lot of them don't even know they're an A because they're humble. That's you, actually. That is your profile because you also went outside of a function, which is even better too. Because you did the smaller, you did the corporate, but you also went outside finance. And now you're in your own entrepreneurial business.
Now I'm going to take that snippet and put it out there as well as your promotion for CFO Hive earlier, but thank you. Yeah. I think what you're getting at is something I see as well in the market, which is, you can operate in, let's say, an owner-managed environment or a small firm environment where you don't have all the resources, but you just know how to get it done and what needs to get done. But you also know what good looks like. And so companies that are growing and are on a trajectory, you kind of understand what that path looks like. And so I do like that combination.
David. Yeah, and I have to tell you, at this stage of my career, with over 40 plus years experience, I've interviewed thousands of people, and my superpower is the ability to read people. I read people for who they are. I don't define them necessarily by their industry or their job or whatever. And I know that that's my superpower. So I can read people usually in about 10 minutes at this stage of my career. And I'm pretty well. Yes, like I've had searches where I found that top candidate beginning, client didn't see it, take them through the process, and at the end of the day, they hire that person that I told them they should have hired at the beginning anyways. But that's okay. That's part of the process. It's just that I've got so much experience, you know what I mean, at doing it. Like, a lot of out-of-the-box hires. I had this one individual, and if any executives are listening to this, you should always return the phone call of an executive search firm, because when we don't advertise our searches anywhere, right? We come to you. We're retained. So we come to you. You don't come to us because we're retained for a certain profile. But I met this one gentleman. I met him at events. He was never a client or a candidate, but a CFO search came up. I called him twice. He didn't return it. Third time, I said, I need to talk to you. And I told him about this role. He says, I'm not looking. I said, I get it, but I think the fit is there. It's an hour. It's, my CEOs in the US, just have an hour. And they had the hour, and yes, they fell in love, for lack of a better word, and he took the role. He wasn't actively looking. His base comp, because it was NASDAQ listed, CFO role, increase of 100,000. So I said, I didn't have to call you back that third time. So I wanted to take that opportunity to tell people who don't, you need to be helpful. When a retained search firm calls, you should always return the call. Even if it's 10 or 15 minutes, try to be helpful. If it's not for you, maybe someone else that you know. In this case, this was a gentleman who I happen to know from the industry. I had never been a client or a candidate, but I just felt the fit was there.
The best things sometimes come when you're not looking as well. And I think I'd say especially in finance, folks have a tendency to put their head down and grind for, and then a decade later, they're like, wait a second. They're like, Sharon. Yeah. And you're like, hey, I called you 5 years ago. You didn't answer.
You do not want that. Then that's where, unfortunately, you begin to feel like you're a bit used. You know what I mean? That's where it is not such a great way to start a relationship.
Right. And that's where you don't play because, again,
you never
that's the transactional.
You never return my calls, but now you need me and now you're calling me. You know what I mean? But 15-minute phone call, for goodness sakes.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we're at time, but there's this question. There are a few questions I always ask, but there's only one more that I'm going to ask you because I think we've talked a ton about learnings along the path in one's career, and you've got a lot of insights you've learned along the way. The Sue Larkins of the world. I find you've said it yourself. Like it's asking questions of people that sometimes really helps them learn the most. They need to answer those ultimately, but are they asking themselves the right questions? What for you would you tell your self, personally, professionally, your younger self that you know today that you didn't know then?
Follow your passion. And you're going to ask me the next question, how do you figure that out? But that's a whole other dialogue. The easiest way that I would start with that is go to a magazine store, stand in front of that beautiful magazine store. If people still read, I still read magazines. What's the first magazine you grab at? A Brookfield place downtown, there was this beautiful bookstore there I used to go into. And the first magazine I would pull out, no matter what, would be the People magazine. So
yeah, passion. I think that's another episode because I've got some follow-ups there because it's not easy. And I would have picked up maybe like an NBA or basketball, or someone would pick up like a rock and roll magazine or whatever they're into, or hip hop.
Yeah.
And then you'd say, well, now what? And I assume there's a process.
Yes, there is. There's a combination. Absolutely. There's a combination of, you can do some testing online that you can do, the Myers-Briggs, the Colby, etc. as a start. But the magazine thing, asking your friends and family, like, looking at your hobbies, right? What gives you joy, etc. But the key word, my younger self, is follow your heart, follow your passion. Because if you can do that, you will never feel like you worked a day in your life.
Yeah, I love that. On that note, Sharon, this is almost 1 hour, and I know you said keep these things short, but I feel like I actually need more of these. So if we could do multiple snippets and turn this into a regular thing, you've just got so much to offer and share, and I know you love doing that. And I think for anyone out there at any stage in their career, this type of advice is just super valuable. So again, I appreciate you and everything you've done in supporting me along the journey and continuing to do so. And really, really appreciate you coming out to this podcast and hope you'll do it again soon.
It was fun. That's what I love. It gave me joy.